Let's swing open the farm gate together every day on WHOW. I'm Stu Ellis, your host of the long running agriculture feature called The Farm Gate. I bring the latest news and information on where agriculture is and where it's going to WHOW Ag listeners several times a day. From tariffs to treaties, from the Board of Trade to the running board on your truck, I cover central Illinois agriculture every day on The Farm Gate. Hear it all on WHOW's many platforms on the radio or online. Join me, Stu Ellis, for The Farm Gate.
Your friend in Central Illinois, WHOW.
Top of the morning. Thanks for being with us. I'm your host today, Seth Lawrence. The WHOW Morning Show streams to Facebook and YouTube. It's brought to you by Peterson Insurance, your Pekin insurance agent in Clinton. My guest on this segment of the morning show is Dr. Lisa Taylor, superintendent of Heyworth Schools. Good morning, Dr. Taylor. How are you today?
Good morning. I'm wonderful. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, thanks for making time for us as always. It's good to have you on the program. And I know a couple of months ago now, Dr. Taylor, since you and I have caught up, school report card data came out. And I'm curious, how did Heyworth schools do on the report card this year?
Well, we fared really well, especially in spite of the pandemic. So our elementary and junior high were designated as commendable overall. And then our high school for the first time ever was designated as exemplary. So lots to celebrate there.
When the information and data came out, was there any anxiety on your part? I know that it had been a while since this information was out there. How were you feeling leading up to the release of that?
There definitely was because, so much is going on in the past year or two and just having so much remote learning and trying to determine that impact and, really trying to stay connected and engaging kids while they're at home for large parts of the school year. But then in addition to that, ISB notified us. So we were notified we were exemplary. So we were celebrating that, but it wasn't public yet. And then they said, oh, some schools made some mistakes or didn't understand some of the data for attendance. And so we'll let you guys know again in a week or so. So there was this pause where you were like, well, are we really exemplary? And now we've told our teachers, but we did end up there. And I think it's just a huge kudos to the teachers and kids that, really worked hard. We had 100% graduation rate.
Wow.
And we've worked really hard at the secondary level of just making sure kids are on track their freshman year, right? So making sure they pass all their classes, making sure they make up any work that they didn't get completed, because that kind of haunts you forever if you don't do those things early on in high school.
Yeah.
And so just a lot to celebrate.
Well, and that's impressive given, the challenges of the last few years as well, with some students at home learning, maybe they're falling behind a little bit. That really is quite an accomplishment for your district.
Yeah, and in elementary, we were really looking at growth. So are you growing kids the way you should be? And that's been the most difficult thing, especially with those early learners who, teachers and kids had masks on when they're learning to pronounce words and trying, learning the alphabet and things like that. And so really paying attention to the growth. We don't test in K2 at the state level, but we have some tests we use here, and we've noticed some struggles there in the K2. And so we're going to try to address some of that moving forward. But beyond that, our kids are growing as they should be and even better than the state in our elementary. And so really proud of that too.
Mm-hmm, absolutely. Talk to me a little bit about the attendance piece. That's something I've really heard a lot of in talking with your peers over the last 3 or 4 weeks is attendance and the challenge there. How much have you seen that in Heyworth?
Yeah, we've definitely seen, I think it's over a 5% increase in chronic absenteeism. So that's kids that are missing 18 days or more, excused or unexcused, right? And I think the pandemic, people know there's options to learn at home, right? But it still has an impact. And so it's really encouraging parents to send your kids, right? To make sure you schedule doctor's appointments outside of the day. And we're still struggling with some of that, right? Because people did stay home more. And, there's also people still worried. And like every other school, we're dealing with influenza A, B, RSV. I mean, it feels like there's so many illnesses in general. So, we can't really teach kids the way we should if they're not at school. And so just really, working with the families, because in elementary, that's not a kid issue, right? And we talked about this earlier this week in one of our meetings in absenteeism. And you can't blame an elementary kid when they're not at school, right? You have to work with the family and we have to make those connections and really get kids, here in our seats.
Yeah, no doubt at all about it. When it comes to the report card, any other areas of concern, whether it be academics or or maybe even successes academically? What else did you find there?
One of the challenges we're seeing is our low-income students were hit the hardest, which I don't think is surprising because there was so much online learning, and we do have devices for every kid, but there's just not as much resources and support, right? And so there's always been an achievement gap between our low-income students and non-low income, but that increased significantly. It did statewide, but it did in Heyworth, and so we're
Hmm.
looking at how do we support kids? How do we intervene early? How do we make sure that we take advantage of every minute we have with them?
Hmm.
So that we're helping them grow too. And so those will be the big focus areas as we move forward.
And that's
On the celebration side, we're doing great with dual credit and
Mhm.
preparing kids for college, and so proud of that too.
Yeah. Well, with that learning loss with the low income students, I mean, that's something you've really got to, initiate quickly because you don't want those kids falling farther behind. You don't want to wait till the end of the year to figure out what you're going to do. I mean, I venture a guess that's something you've really got to move fast on.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much research on if kids are not reading on grade level by third grade and how that contributes to dropping out of school, right? The
Mhm.
further you move up in K 12, the more difficult the reading gets, and kids can't be successful on ACT and SAT unless you're reading at high levels. And
Mhm.
so, really trying to catch that as early as you can is critical for all schools.
No question. How about just standardized testing and those sorts of things? What did you see there?
Overall, we performed above the state level. We had a really high performing junior class, and we have some smaller classes, 60 to 70 kids. So if you have a few kids who really struggle, it makes quite a dent in your overall scores. But overall, we're performed above the state. Unfortunately, like every other district, that data doesn't come in until 3 to 6 months later. And so it's not real useful in the classroom, but it's an overall measure of how our district is performing. And so we were pleased with those results.
Dr. Lisa Taylor is the superintendent of Heyworth Schools, our guest on the phone here for this morning. Dr. Taylor, when it comes to just those thresholds that you meet, kind of or benchmarks, where you fall in a given year, obviously the goal is to improve the next year. Where are you targeting as a district that you need to improve at in the years ahead to, whether it's improve your designation or just improve in general? Where are you targeting for those?
We're really focused on literacy levels because we know that is something that you need in life, right? Whatever job or career or college, wherever you go, you need to be able to read and write at a high level. And so that's what our school teams have been working on. And our elementary team, I was at their meeting earlier this week after school, and we were talking about how do we get kids, make sure all kids, that's our goal, right, are reading on grade level by third grade. And so we're looking at, do we need to add a section in these grade levels to make those class sizes smaller? You and I talked about it a little bit off the air, but teaching 15 kids to read is
Mhm.
going to be you're going to be a lot more effective than you are in teaching 22. We want to make sure all kids get the support and the learning they need at those early levels, and really just instill a love of learning and enjoy reading, right?
Mhm.
Because reading on your phone is different than reading a book that you're really into. And so trying to instill some of those fundamentals in our young kids is a big goal for our district.
Yeah, well, and that just speaks to the balance you have to have because so much of what is happening in the classroom now is dictated by technology. So there has to be that balance of, okay, we're going to use devices for this time, but we're going to go back to maybe paper books or hardback books for this segment. I mean, there's got to be a balance there, I'm sure.
Yeah, definitely. I think we've hit that tipping point. Kids are on electronic devices, it feels like all the time, right? If you go to a game, you see kids in the crowd on their parents' phone or on a iPad or whatever it is. And we're just trying to find that healthy place in between, right? We want you to learn these technical skills, but on the same time, reading is fundamental to everything we do, and helping kids enjoy that and find books that they enjoy and just spark that interest is something elementary teachers work on every day.
Yeah, you mentioned that component of finding ways to make class sizes smaller. We'll talk about that at the other end of the break. But in the meantime, Dr. Taylor, anything else from the school report card? I mean, I know it's more than just academics and grades and performance in the classroom and those sorts of things. There's a lot more that goes into it. Did anything non-academic stand out to you in the report card this year?
Yeah, financially, we are still a district that, has some need from the state. So we're tier two and we get a little additional funding for that. And we're trying to use those funds to target our low income students. But, there's a lot of things that are good. Teacher retention, we only had to hire one position this year, which is almost insane in the world that we're in, with the ability for teachers to move and change districts, right, due to the shortage. And so keeping our teachers is a goal. If we add teachers, of course, we'll be trying to retain them also. And it's just, there's lots of great things going on, but there is the shortage out there that's kind of, haunting all districts. And we're trying to keep our staff, and our staff attendance was down also. A lot of that was due to the rules with COVID and having to stay home and, positive tests and symptomatic. And so look to see a lot of those numbers up this year and hopefully have some impact on learning too.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. What was your overall takeaway just on how COVID impacted learning? You mentioned, the low income impacts there, attendance, but graduation stayed steady. Was there any other takeaways in how COVID impacted learning in your district in the last couple of years?
Yeah, I think, obviously it's had a huge impact, and especially on your youngest kids. The older kids seem to adapt to technology and remote learning a little bit better. I think there's some things we can learn from that, right? When kids are homesick now, they can still go on Google Classroom. We've kind of changed the way we deliver, so you can at least make sure they can zoom in with a teacher live if they need to. Our teachers are willing to go above and beyond. But in addition to that, younger learners, it just doesn't work well, right? They need face-to-face interaction. They need the socialization of school and the impact on mental health. Those are things that it will just take years to recover from.
It will. It'll be interesting to see how all of that impacts kids even beyond their, kind of K-12 education as well. But Dr. Taylor, in the meantime, let's take a time out. I know that that report card, folks can view it and check out the data that you're talking about. Is that at the Heyworth website? Is there somewhere specific they should go to find that?
Yeah, they could go on illinoisreportcard.com and look at any school, but they can also go to our school district website, which is husd4.org, and all of our report cards are on there also.
That is Dr. Lisa Taylor, Superintendent of Heyworth Schools, my guest on the phone. More to come with her on the WHOW Morning Show.
WHOW.
Hi there. I'm here to tell you a little about this new program called Safe to Help Illinois. Maybe you know somebody who's being bullied, or worse, thinking about hurting themselves or others. If you don't feel safe telling an adult about the things that are happening around you, check out Safe to Help.
Safe to Help is not about snitching or getting someone in trouble. It's about helping one another out.
You can call, you can text.
You can download the free mobile app, and it's all over social media.
So what do you say? Let's give it a try.
Brought to you by IEMA.
This is Noah Atkinson, owner of Lincoln Printers and Sign Designs in Lincoln. Our communities thrive thanks to small businesses. That's why I'm pleased to be the exclusive sponsor of the WHOW WEZC Lincoln Printers Business of the Month.
Country Junction at the intersection of U.S. Highway 51 and Illinois Route 54 in Clinton has been an area staple for many years. It's filled with ever-changing crafts, folk art, candles, furniture, home accents, decorative accessories, antiques, and much more. They'll receive a $200 gift certificate good at Lincoln Printers and Sign Designs for being our WHOW WEZC Lincoln Printers Business of the Month. Nominate a business you'd like featured by emailing us at whow@randyradio.com.
Lincoln Printers and Sign Designs salute this local business for helping make the community grow. And when it comes to envelopes, wedding invitations, signs, banners, vinyl wraps, and more, find us online at lincolnprintersinc.com.
The WHOW Morning Show is now video streamed live on the WHOW WEZC DeWittDailyNews.com Facebook page and on the new WHOW TV YouTube channel. Watch Morning Show host Seth Lawrence interview guests live, as well as watch archived video podcasts of any interview you missed. Whether on Facebook or YouTube, we're providing two more ways that Central Illinois' local news station, WHOW, delivers compelling content for you.
Your friend in Central Illinois. WHOW.
Top of the morning. Thanks again for being with us today. I'm your host, Seth Lawrence. The WHOW Morning Show streams to Facebook and YouTube. It's brought to you by Peterson Insurance, your Pekin Insurance agent in Clinton. Dr. Lisa Taylor is the superintendent of Heyworth Schools and is on the phone with us for today. Dr. Taylor, you touched on just briefly in that first segment, trying to find ways to find more space at the elementary level and decrease classroom sizes, particularly to have more effective learning and catch students up out of COVID and things of that nature. Talk a little bit about what the need is and what you're looking at.
So there's a challenge, right, of our classes are they're really at the full point that you would want them at, the max point. And then in addition to that, we do have a couple classroom spaces we could use and move, offices that are in there elsewhere and kind of do some shuffling around the building. But we also have a new housing addition coming here in Heyworth, kind of an income-based housing and a potential new subdivision development. So we're kind of looking at this from all angles, right? We need to help our earliest learners read on grade level. We also have some potential for increases in enrollment, right? And then you have limited space. So our teacher team's been meeting and really looking at where's our most need, what can we do with these spaces, while also kind of planning for the future. And so I believe they will recommend adding a section in at least K2, maybe further than that. And then there's some other things they're talking about. We talked about that low income group and how do we, intervene early. So do we need more interventionists? Do we need more time? What do we need there? And then at the secondary level, they're really looking at electives in junior high and in high school, just making sure we're hitting that career piece too. So we have one guidance counselor for the junior high and high school, which is, 500 plus kids. And we know it's not enough. And so we're looking at adding a college and career counselor position just to help kids kind of identify what area, they enjoy learning about or what they enjoy doing, getting some kind of internships and work-based learning and prepare our kids for the future.
Yep, no question. Now, it's interesting you're looking at like adding sections and such with the teacher shortage. How do those couple of things overlap? Because if you're going to add sections, obviously you need more teachers and such. So how about that?
Yeah, and we talked about that. Our goal would be to post those early, right? And so we want to take our recommendations to the board as early as possible and post those early. We tend to have a few more candidates for elementary than you do when you get really specific in, high school science, math, foreign language are really hard to fill. And so we're trying to get this work done quickly. We just started school in August and it feels like the year's, almost halfway over. And so trying to get this in front of the board in January or February so we hire before school is out and really get people comfortable, acclimated to our district. And of course, moving around rooms and making sure we have enough furniture and all of that is a challenge too.
Yeah. In just kind of a ballpark figure, what would this kind of expansion cost, I guess?
Yeah. So if we do K2, I would say you're looking at, 180 to 200,000 a year with benefits. We do have some a TIF district that's expiring here in Heyworth. And as you've probably heard from many superintendents about their levies and increasing values. So we have, I think, the funding to do that. We also have a wind farm coming down the road. And so we're just trying to plan financially, but also really focus on the classroom where the money should be spent.
Yeah. How much has, I feel like, I don't want to make it sound like districts are flush with cash because, I'm sure that's certainly not the case, but it feels like there's a lot more flexibility financially to do things like what you're talking about, take on, other districts are taking on, updates of their facilities or their school buildings, things of that nature. Have you noticed that trend, Dr. Taylor? Like, it just feels like money is a bit more, I say abundant. I don't mean it to sound like I said, you're swimming
Available.
in cash. Yeah, available. Thank you. That sounds much more politically correct, I guess. But how about that?
Yeah, so for us, we didn't have to use any of our COVID funding or ESSER grant funding really for facilities because we had taken on the facilities project before the pandemic. And so what we did is we paid for all of our paraprofessionals and our secretaries with grant funding, which then frees up money in the district budget, right? So that's how we've been able to do it. We ended the year with over $1 million surplus, so we used our grant money on people instead of things, right? And so now we have some money in there to do the things that we need to do to impact learning for a long time here in Heyworth.
Sure.
We did purchase some things. We just installed a marquee sign at the elementary. They had one of the old signs where you go out and change the letters. I think they're fun, but they're not real user friendly. And so kind of updated a few smaller things there, but we spent over $300,000 a year on staff, which freed up money in the district budget.
Gotcha. Very good. Well, Dr. Taylor, anything else on that you want to talk about or point out to us this morning?
Just that I think it's exciting for Heyworth. It's exciting for our community. Your kids spend most of their day in schools, and we want, teachers who care about kids, but are also really focused on literacy and getting them learning and socializing the way they should. And it just feels wonderful to be back in school and having these types of conversations instead of mask and restrictions and that sort of thing.
It is refreshing. I will give you that. It is certainly refreshing. No question about it. Dr. Taylor, let's wrap it up this morning talking about extracurriculars. You've got a lot going on in Heyworth and a lot of successful programs. What's the latest?
Oh, wow. It feels like it's basketball every night right now. Winter sports have kicked in and wrestling has started up and that sort of thing. But it is all things basketball in Heyworth last night. Our seventh grade girls won sectionals, and so they are headed to state on Saturday in Paris, Illinois. So we'll be driving a couple hours there. We had a huge crowd, great turnout. Our girls are so excited. And, I think the best part of that win, I wasn't able to be there. I have a pup issue, but we got an email today from the other school's principal saying, complimenting our coach and our kids on their character and just saying, you guys could have put the pressure on us and just blew us out of the gym, but you didn't. And you held your heads high. And so I'm just really proud of our kids today. That was the best email I got this morning.
That's awesome.
Our 8th grade girls are in regional championship tonight, and our boys beat Maroa earlier this week. I mean, there is a basketball game every single night, I think, for the next couple weeks. So if you don't love basketball, this is not the time of year for you, but that is really a lot of what we're doing right now.
No question. Very good. So a lot of things happening in Heyworth. And Dr. Taylor, as we wrap it up here for this morning, anything on the calendar coming up you want to highlight for us, be it extracurricular or just in general? When do your kids go on Christmas break and all those things?
Yeah, we have lots of fun stuff coming up that we haven't gotten to do in a couple years. So all those Christmas programs are back. I think we have programs on the 8th, the 11th, the 13th. So in the midst of basketball, if fine arts are your thing, we get huge turnouts, and so excited to see our kids perform again and sing. And I always feel like it just gets me in the Christmas spirit, especially that K-2 program. So I'm looking forward to that.
Excellent. Well, Dr. Taylor, where do folks go to keep up with all the things happening in your district and maybe even follow you? How do they do that?
Yeah, definitely check us out on Facebook, and we're all on social media, of course. But in addition, our website, husd4.org, and we have a Heyworth Hornets app, kind of all things Heyworth. And so just, check in and reach out to us if you need anything.
Dr. Taylor, best to you and your family, and happy holidays. We'll talk to you after the new year. That is Dr. Lisa Taylor, Superintendent of Heyworth Schools, our guest on the phone for this morning. The morning show streams to Facebook and YouTube, brought to you by Peterson Insurance, your Pekin Insurance agent in Clinton. Network news on the way on the morning show.
WHOW.